To talk about combining a passion for photography with charity work, on this episode we are joined by Colby Brown from The Giving Lens and Ivan Makarov with the Plus One collection. This is PhotoNetCast number 68. Hello and welcome. You're listening to PhotoNetCast. This is episode number 68. We are recording on March 11th, 2012. My name is Antonio Marques. I'll be your host for today. We are going to talk about how we can combine photography with charity projects. And to help me on that discussion, I have right here with me the usual Dave Wilson. Hello, Dave. How are you?
Hey, Antonio. I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks for joining us. And also, two very special guests with amazing projects, and we are going to discuss them more in detail. I will start with Ivan Makarov. Hello, Ivan. Thanks so much for having accepted the invitation to join us on PhotoNetCast.
Hi, no, happy to join.
And also a person that really doesn't need much of an introduction, Colby Brown, a professional photographer from Denver. Thanks for also accepting the invitation to join us on this PhotoNetCast, Colby.
Oh, my pleasure. Happy to be here as well. Looking forward to it.
Okay, so let's see how we are going to really kick off the show here. I would like to encourage everyone, if you haven't done so, to visit PhotoNetCast.com. That's the place where we have all the show notes and all the links to the social networks and all of those things that the good things that allow us to connect online. And if you are if you are following us live, thanks so much for taking this time to join us and participate on the show. If you are listening to this at a later time with the official audio release of the episode, glad to have you also on that side. Let's start the show, and let's start with a few news topics as usual. Let's see, what do I have here? I have a funny story of the week. It seems that Nikon has been using things that they shouldn't. So a story on Petapixel that says Nikon has been using stolen Canon 5D Mark II footage for a advertisement for the D800. We have seen this sort of things in the past. I don't think it's really Nikon's fault. I think that they hired someone to do this advertisement, this campaign, and this someone wasn't either too ethical or sort of missed the point of it. What do you guys think? Dave, you are a Nikon user, you are a fan of this camera, and now suddenly they have to use the footage from the 5D Mark II? No, it's just me being bad-mouthed, yeah.
This is pretty funny. I mean, in a kind of sad way, I guess, but it strikes me that if you're producing a campaign for a brand new camera, you would be doing it before the camera came out. Therefore, you'd have to go to the people who had the pre-release cameras to get the footage. So I'm surprised there wasn't more control involved in the process. But I mean, it's kind of funny.
Mm-hmm. Who else?
Surprising, but funny.
Who else here uses Nikon? Colby, you use Nikon? No, you are a Canon.
No, I'm actually I'm a Canon guy.
All right.
I mean, I too kind of found it kind of funny. I mean, it wasn't. There's a lot of interesting mix in the industry with the Canon and Nikon, Apple and Android, and all this type of stuff that happens in technology. Mm-hmm. But I agree with Dave. I mean, I think it's I was surprised there wasn't as much control, especially since Nikon has been I don't want to use the term playing catch up, but basically trying to get more into the cinematography world with digital SLRs, and for what is meant to be one of their flagships for their new video stuff to end up having to use Canon stuff, again, mostly by accident, I'm guessing, is interesting, I guess, is the best term that I can use to describe it.
Yeah, interesting for sure. Ivan, what do you say to this? You are a Nikon user. Are you planning? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm shooting Nikon.
Are you planning to get the new D800 or not really?
Yes, I think most of us will get it sooner or later. I don't have any pre-orders outstanding yet, but I'll probably just get it as soon as it comes out from whoever has it in stock.
Okay. And what do you say to this? Was this an intentional sort of thing from Nikon. Do you think it was just the project manager for the creative ad or something like that that messed up things? What do you think?
Yeah, just probably some miscommunication with whoever they hired to do the job. They didn't tell them that make sure you don't use Canon equipment. And
they didn't get that email.
It's kind of like, you remember the stories that used to come out when they would report they saw Bill Gates' children with an iPad or something, or iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess it was probably mostly with an iPod when the iPod first came out. So this is a kind of a similar thing. Is you just need to communicate these things, and a bit of an embarrassment. I think it's just funny.
One of the other kind of funny things here is the main section of video they were complaining about was a section of time lapse, which could have been shot in pretty much any camera. It wasn't shot as video in the first place anyway. So. Yeah, it's altogether quite amusing, but embarrassing for the marketing people at Nikon, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it has nothing on the camera, and the camera will be great. And this was just some sort of miscommunication anyway. Moving on, Trey Ratcliffe had an attempt at beating the record for the world's biggest photo walk yesterday in Austin. Dave, you were there?
Indeed I was. It was extraordinarily wet. The weather was totally un-Austin-like. There were 530 people signed up online to say they show up. Quite a few of them chickened out when they saw the rain. I was one of the foolish ones who didn't chicken out. I haven't yet heard what the official count is. They're going to announce that right about now, in fact. So maybe during the show I'll take a look on Google Plus and see what the answer was. But we're trying to get more than 187 people to break the current record. Looking at the group picture, I think it's probably, I counted a quick 150-ish, but I'm not entirely sure what the final count's going to be. All so right. We'll see. But there were a lot of incredibly soggy people walking around downtown Austin yesterday afternoon, proving how good the weatherproofing on their SLRs is.
I'm just amazed that you can gather such a crowd in Austin. Every time there's an Austin event, you feel that the whole street
you
of photographers.
No, you can't.
I can't.
Trey can. Yeah. It's not the Austin thing, it's the Trey thing. Yeah. So... Yeah, no, but 530 sign-ups, it was quite remarkable. And it was kind of fun despite the weather, I suppose, but it would have been a whole lot better had the weather been not rainy.
All right.
It would have been better still if my boots hadn't leaked, but that's another story entirely.
Soggy feet, right?
Yeah, very.
All right, just two other points and very quick ones, just in case you haven't noticed it. Photo Shelter has updated their SEO guide for 2012. They have an amazing guide, and definitely not being paid to say this. They have an amazing guide for SEO and how to apply it to photography. So they have just released their latest version for 2012. Make sure that you go there and read it. Even if you are not a Photo Shelter user, I'm sure that you can apply a lot of it to your own websites. Also, Jim Goldstein, one of our more or less regular co-hosts, is going to release a webinar on mastering star trail photography. He's has very nice examples of his own star trail photographies. He's going to release a webinar, and you can follow the webinar live for free, or you can buy it at a later point. If you buy it at a later point, you also get a copy of his latest book, Photographing the Fourth Dimension, Time. So I just wanted to put this out there if anyone is interested at all. Now, Dave, what do you say? Let's move on to the topic that brought us here.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so going to our main topic, and as I mentioned in the beginning, we are going to be discussing how you can combine photography with charity. You know, charity is always a good thing if you can combine it with what you love, and in this case, photography, even better. And as I've mentioned in the beginning, and as I've introduced, we have two great guests with us that have quite an amazing experience in successful experience, I would say, combining both charity and photography. And let's start with Ivan Makarov. You are a photographer from the San Francisco Bay Area. You are also the editor of the Plus One collection. Do you want to just give us a little bit of background, first on your own work, and then on the Plus One collection, and then we can go into more specifics?
Sure. Like you said, I live in Bay Area. I live actually in San Jose, which is South Bay, just south of San Francisco. And I guess my photography is mostly I do landscapes, architecture. I do some portrait stuff, but mostly just for myself and occasionally a client job. And a few months ago, we had a thought that why don't we try to do two things? Why don't we try to put a community book together? I think Google Plus, one of the greatest things on Google Plus is the photography community. It's very active, very vibrant. Right away, photographers just jumped in on Google Plus because they felt that was one of the things that was missing. They were not getting that kind of quality of communication and interaction on other networks as they were getting as they found on Google Plus. And so, great community. We thought, why don't we try to put a community book together? And then as we started thinking, throwing thoughts around, why don't we not just do a book, but actually do something good with the book? Is see if we can raise some money by selling that book, and that sort of became the project. Is this big community book, and with proceeds going to charity, and we've expanded it not just beyond the book. We were doing an ebook that will come out as well. Mm-hmm. We are working on the app, which will have photography from the community, and there's a lot more that we're considering what else we can do that will further the cause or any future projects and so forth. Now that we have sort of a group of photographers who are interested in participating in giving their not just photography but also their time. And so we have a whole list of other projects that are in the works that we thought about and talked about internally, and then we're going to talk about with our community in the near future.
All right, sounds good.
So how many people do you actually have working on this, Ivan? Because it strikes me as a pretty gargantuan task to pull it together.
Yeah, what I should do is I should show you guys. I'm sitting in the garage right now, and I'm just going to turn my laptop, and really apologies for the mess, but the way it happened this weekend is when the shipment of books got here. So I can show you what it looks like right in the middle of it all. The books are standing over there. You can see the stack of them, kind of 200 of them, and then you see all these boxes. I need to clean it up and put them all away, but essentially these are the boxes that got there, and the only time I had yesterday was to sort of open them all together and inspect all the books. And so today I'm going to put the books into boxes and ship them away. So in terms of how many people we have working on it, there's about a team of 10 or so people that have worked on the book, on putting the book together. We have a designer that we're working with who is Andy Lee, who is from England, and he's been doing the bulk of the design work, and it's a lot of work because we have a lot of photography, and now he's working on ebook. We have people who are helping us review the book. When you have information from 500 photographers, you need to organize it, you need to go through it, and you need to spell check it. Believe it or not, people don't spell their titles of their photography very well. People misspell their websites and so forth. So it's a lot of work that has to go behind the scenes, because whenever you put something out there, they're going to check and they're going to tell you all the errors. So the quicker we minimize, the less errors, the better. We have a legal team who's helped us with the legal aspects of the projects. We talk a lot about copyright. Obviously, we have to go about it in the right way that I don't have 500 photographers try to sue me at the end of the day. We have accounting. I had to actually realize that I have to whenever you have any amount of money involved, you have to worry about accounting, you have to worry about taxes. So I had people help me with that, and obviously we have a good team, like I said, that are working on just reviewing everything and double checking everything. So yeah, quite a good team, but somehow we made it thus far.
Okay, so that sounds very, very, or at least a very complex process, but it is a very complex project, right? So as you mentioned, over
It got
500
this
photographers.
way.
Yeah.
It got this way. Yeah, I never thought it would be this way. I was really thinking maybe we'll have a 50 to 100 people, and I've done similar projects like this in the past, and it was very simple to run it. But all of a sudden, it got too big, and it just got too complex. But luckily, we're still getting through it.
So let me see if I got this correct. 500 photographers, over 53 countries participating, and your print version of the book is going to have 193 photos. Did I get this right?
Very close. I need to update those numbers on the website,
Right.
but yeah, close to 200 photos in the book, and 520 something photographers.
So, yeah.
And you're planning to put the other photos into the ebook and the app version, yes? So if your picture
That's
wasn't in
right.
the print book, you'll be in the electronic version.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You started this on Google Plus, and your project is called the Plus One Collection. Why on Google Plus and not on other social networks? Does Google Plus have anything that simplified the process or that brought the community more together? It's, in my personal opinion, it's very visual. Did this help in any way?
Absolutely. I don't think it's possible to do something like this on any other platform that I know of. I think mostly because Google Plus has such a great sharing tools. When you have good information to share, when you have any kind of content that's interesting, that others feel may be interesting, it just spreads really quick. When we first announced, when we released the limited edition of the book, the post that I had was reshared 200 times within a few hours. And it wasn't just reshared 200 times. Some of the users that shared the post were power users that have over 500,000 users. It was also shared by Vig Gundotra, who is the VP of social at Google, who is one of the top people at Google, who has over 1 million followers. So all of a sudden, the message that we had was broadcasted to literally probably millions of people on Google+. It was kind of the day that we launched it, it was very hard to log into Google+ and not see it. It's very difficult to do on any other platform if you think about it, because a lot of the platforms for photographers where they hang out, whether it be forums or whether it be Flickr groups or Twitter or whoever, they're very kind of small and contained. So they're great for small interaction, for small groups of people. But if you want to bring message to the masses, it would be difficult to do just because everything is so contained within those small groups and not easily shared. And so Google Plus gives you an ability to broadcast to a lot of people, and I think that's why photography community has embraced it. First of all, user counts go up fast. You don't have to be on the recommended user list to get a large following pretty quickly. And second, if you have content, it'll just get reshared right away and be seen by a lot of people.
Colby, you want to drop your opinion on this one? Did you find Google Plus, and everyone knows you are one of the photography superstars in Google Plus. Do you agree with Ivan of the benefits of using this platform?
I do, and I think definitely specifically the reasons that he said is why Google Plus is such an engaging platform for photographers is because the fact that there was so many other. I always equate it out to interest networks. I actually just finished up writing a book called Google Plus for Photographers. I talked a lot about this, and basically, the interest networks are like Flickr, 500 pics, where it's kind of like what Ivan said, where it's, you have these smaller communities, and there are certainly some positive aspects to them, but, you can't get things to go viral. And I think most importantly, unless for photographers, is that you don't have an easy way for people to really have solid connections. You can put a photo up on Flickr and people, give what I call digital hugs. It's like, oh, this photo is great and all that stuff, but there's no real connection. It's hard to have a conversation, at least in a lot of people's experience. So Google Plus opened up a lot of those different spectrums in order to allow people to easily and I guess more importantly, meaningfully connect in ways that weren't possible on other networks. And of course, Facebook is a very common comparison. But Facebook, if we remember back in history, Facebook originally started out as that closed network. It started out as a network basically for Harvard University. And I think even though they do have 850 million users, that has resonated through everything that they've done. So it's difficult for a photographer to jump on there and create like a fan page and get a lot of following because it still has a closed nature aspect to it. You go on Facebook in order to visit with friends and see your family and stuff like that, where Google Plus is much more about interest. So because you have all these variables coming together, it really was just it was the right time, it was the right place. And, I certainly think the photography community, while not the only community on Google Plus, is certainly one of the most active. And I think it's for that reason that a lot of these, projects like Ivan's, the Google Plus One book, and a handful of others that I've seen out there have been able to have legs is because of those connections, because of that spider web. I don't want to say marketing, but basically the same aspect. You share it with someone, they share it with 8 people, they shares it with 10 people, shares it with 1 million people, and all of a sudden, regardless if you have power users sharing it or not, you're getting your photography work, you're getting your conversation, you're getting whatever you're pushing out there in front of a lot of people, in hopefully a more meaningful way than other networks.
So. Plus One collection, Ivan. You mentioned that this started basically as an idea to get people together and publish a book. Originally, you didn't have the charity ideology behind it, and you are thinking about sending the proceedings to Kiva. You want to just talk a little bit about Kiva, what they do, and why you've chosen this platform?
Definitely. Everything that we did, we put it out for a vote, kind of a thing. I brought up ideas, and then a lot of the times those ideas were built upon by other people, as we discussed it. So that's another great aspect of Google Plus is it's very easy to get feedback, and feedback that you're going to get will be very honest and very open in a lot of it. So we discussed which charities we want to work with, and people that were contributing to the project were from all over the world. So they said, we need to do something with the national aspect of it. We can't just support an American charity or a UK charity or something. We want to support an international charity. Also, obviously, people wanted a non-religious organization that doesn't have, some religious aspect to it. So we said, absolutely. And then what we found as we worked on this project is that it became easier for us to work with a smaller organization. So Kiva is a new nonprofit organization that only been around for a few years now. They've had a lot of growth, somewhat known organization. I've known about them before this project. And so what they do is they're known for micro lending. So essentially they you can go and do a $25 loan to somebody in the less fortunate circumstances in the country. They work a lot with people in Africa, where all it takes for you to start up a business is just a few $100. And so these people that have this business, for example, it's a cleaning water business somewhere where there's no clean water in the village. They need a few $100s to build a well. And they can't go to the bank and borrow money. They don't have that ability, and there's no banks that will borrow them money. So Kiva comes in and borrows and let them borrow these money. And then so the $25 goes into I designate a project to build a well in this country for this individual, and that individual builds it and then makes money and pays me back. So great idea. It's called microlending, and that's what they do. And so we decided to donate money to that organization. They've been very responsive once we got hold of them. And they said, oh, that's a great project you're doing. We've been waiting for something like this to happen for years now since we've launched. And we're definitely happy to support it. And they allowed us to use the logo for our book. We actually have their logo on our cover. We can use their name for promotional purposes. We not just say we're going to donate proceeds to charity, but we say we're going to donate money to Kiva. And And then we've been in contact with them, and they've been very supportive. And that's what I found. We've tried to deal with some of the larger organizations, but we just didn't find the too big of a response, because for them we were just too small of a fish in the pond, so to speak. And they had bigger projects to work on. And so, but Kiva was very happy to hear the community on Google Plus is taking it well and wants to participate in something like this. And so obviously it's been a great partnership for us that way.
Okay. I think from my point of view, it's an excellent choice, because with something like Kiva, your money gives again and again and again, rather than a one-off expense to build a well and be done with it. I know a charity I work with ran a similar small microloan project. They discovered that the payback rates in Central America were 96%. They're actually getting better repayment rates than giving someone a loan in the US, for example. So it seems to work very well, that model. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Colby, you and I talked a little bit about on Google Plus about how it's just easier to work with smaller organizations. There's just less red tape, and people are actually, you can get hold of somebody on the phone, right?
Definitely. And that was, I mean, when you announced the whole book and everything, I've always been a big fan of it. But the reason that I personally actually didn't submit something in originally was you guys were originally connecting with UNICEF, I think is what it was. And UNICEF's a phenomenal organization. I actually, I do some humanitarian photography, so I've certainly worked with them, and they do great stuff. But as you mentioned, there's such a big whale in this pond where there's so many other smaller fish that not only need the financing but are usually much more of a pleasure to work with. And Kiva's phenomenal. I was so happy to hear you guys say that. Obviously, they're local to San Francisco. They have headquarters based out there, and they're awesome. The micro lending aspect is huge and really taking off. And yeah, I mean, once I heard that you guys switched over, I was super stoked. And obviously from your guys' point of view, I imagine that the difficulty in actually, again, just picking up a phone and calling someone and actually getting a response, let alone being able to call anyone, is quite huge when you switch from the huge macro guys to one of those smaller ones. And Kiva, like I said, is growing drastically. They actually get some big stuff. I've had links on my website to them for years, and me and my wife contribute, and they do phenomenal stuff. I was very happy to hear that.
You guys, both of you are involved in this charity project. There is the Plus One collection, the Giving Lands. There are a few others around. Are these too few from photographers? What do you guys say?
I think so. My opinion is that we can be doing a lot more with our photography. A lot of the times, obviously, we're all happy to contribute our photography to different things. I think all of us are getting emails from charitable organizations that says, "Hey, I like your picture of Silicon Valley. Can I use it for our website?" And most of us say yes, sure. If you're not trying to make money on this, definitely. I've always been happy to help. But I think we could be doing a lot more, because we have the skills, we have the talents, we have the equipment, and just like some professions, one thing that I've discovered working with the law firm that we're working on the legal aspects of our organization is that lawyers are always happy to give back. They have the concept called pro bono, where they do quite a bit of work during the year for free, just because they're supporting a cause or because they see a client that has a real need but not ability to pay, and they do that work for free. And some of the other professions have the same concept. Obviously, doctors perform a lot of work for free. They don't turn you away in the hospitals without insurance. They will still treat you. And so I think we as photographers could definitely be doing a lot more.
I think, I've been doing this for about 8 years, photography in general, just professionally, or I guess full-time. I hate using the word professionally, but, humanitarian aspects of anything, let alone photography, is, I think that a lot of people want to give back. I think a lot of people have, good hearts or good minds where, as Ivan said, someone contacts you'll give them their photo and whatnot. But I think for most people, the challenge with this is that they don't know how. They don't know how to give back. I get hundreds of emails a week, not necessarily just about this, but of a photographer, aspiring photographer that wants to get into like humanitarian photography and like do it for like a living. And like the reality is there's like no money in humanitarian photography. It's very hard to do it actually for a living without doing something else. But it's also very difficult to understand the complexities of working in the humanitarian world. A lot of organizations have great hearts as well, but they are also slightly misrepresented because, say, for us in the West, it's like taking an organization based here out of Denver, Colorado, and going to like Haiti, and then putting like our ideals into Haitian culture. And so for photographers, it's kind of always trying to find that balance of how do we give back? How do we how can we do something meaningful with either our work, with our skills, with our connections? And I think that is why specifically these two projects, organizations, the Plus One Book, and then my organization, my company, The Giving Lens, is really taking off, and people have taken a liking to it, is because there's really nothing else out there, and it's people don't know where to start, and if people don't know where to start, people also don't know where to join until that opportunity presents themselves, and the reality is that I think most people aren't necessarily go-getters, and I don't mean that in a negative, but it takes a lot to come up with the idea, and not only to do that, but to see it through. And the photography world and humanitarian aspect is no stranger to that. There's so many small organizations that start off with great intentions and then fizz out because of finances, because of the challenges of working in different countries, and all sorts of other different variables. So to really having the mindset in order to see something through, in order to really affect some sort of change, or to really get into doing some fundraising is not easy. And I don't know if we can necessarily make it easier, but I think that there certainly are a ton of opportunities out there to do it right. And I think that's the biggest key, because too many people, again, want to give back, but they don't know how. And sometimes that actually leads to more problems. I can talk about Haiti all day long. I have another organization that I go there constantly. And Haiti, for example, has, before the earthquake in 2010, had 13,000 NGOs working there. Post-earthquake, they have about 16 to 17,000. And you have a lot of people, again, that just don't have the right mindset in order to understand the difference between empowering local communities and whatnot. Yeah, I like I said, I talk for hours about this, but I think ultimately there needs to be more options, and people need to do more due diligence in order to really research and figure out the best way in order to give back, rather than always just starting their own or always just joining the bandwagon. I think it's good to do the research. It's good to see, how the Plus One Book did, and the great money they're going to be raised for Kiva, and all these different other organizations that you possibly can join or get involved with.
Yeah. I think your two projects actually illustrate two radically different approaches to charitable photography. The Plus One collection, people are using their skills up in the US, donating pictures they've produced up here generally, and then generating income here, which is then being sent somewhere else. Whereas Colby, The Giving Lens, you seem to be more interested in actually engaging directly with the NGOs that are actually doing the work in the third world countries or wherever. Do you want to talk a bit about The Giving Lens then? Because that's, again, a different model that strikes me as being equally valid, but entirely different.
Definitely, sure. So The Giving Lens was, I originally came up with the concept or the principle about 3 years ago. And the whole idea was very broad. And it was basically just kind of like what we're talking about. It's how do we get photographers to find a meaningful way to give back? And it went through a handful of different reiterations. A lot of it, most of it, or I guess all of it, kind of failed or fizzed off, whether it was where I was in my career, whether it was where the industry was, or where the financial markets were. They eventually didn't come to fruition. And it wasn't until the last 12 months that I really kind of had an epiphany. And I mean, for me, a lot of my photography business that I make a living on is actually on photo education. And I saw a natural progression or organic evolution, so to speak, of where I was going with photo education and how we can find a tangible way in order to utilize that in order to directly give back to communities. And, as a travel photographer that has, I actually turned 29 this month, or 30 this month, sorry. I'm fairly young, but I've traveled all over the world. I've been very fortunate in my career. And I noticed that there was a one-side street to traveling and visiting these countries, not just as a photographer, but I think as a just an individual traveling, whether you're a tourist or a nomad or whatever it is. It's always kind of this one-sided street. We visit these beautiful locations. We take pictures of these beautiful cultures. Maybe we spend a little bit of money in these communities. Maybe we send some photos back if we're very kind. Most people don't. And then we come back home, and if we're professionals, we sell our prints and we make money and we make a living. And these people see nothing. And I always kind of felt a little bit wrong about that, and felt that there was something that we can do. So that's pretty much how The Giving Lens came about. It was the idea of mixing photo education, so bringing down people that want to further their photo skills or utilize their skills in order to give back, with partnering with sustainable development projects. So we offer a handful of different trips around the world at very, very reasonable prices, typically sometimes half, sometimes a fourth of the cost of what a standard tour or trip, photography trip with, say, like National Geographic or something like that, likes to run. And the whole, basically, it's typically about 70% of the proceeds, for the most part, 60%, and it going directly back to the organization and the communities that we're working with. So every trip that we do, we partner with one NGO that is local to the host country that we're in. So for this year, we're working in Peru, Nicaragua, Tanzania, Jordan, and then Israel and Palestine. And each of those trips have a different cause. So like for Nicaragua, we're partnering with an organization called Empowerment International. They focus on child education. So for that trip, what we're doing is we're bringing down 2 groups of 10 individuals each, where I'm leading photography workshops, where part of the time I'm educating these individuals on different aspects of how to be better photographers. And Empowerment International actually has a program, a photography program for 16 of their students. They actually look over, I think it's 272 students that they help out outside of Granada in Nicaragua. So their photography program is partnering with this workshop that we're doing, so that it's kind of a collaborative learning environment. I'm teaching the people coming down, and those people are going out with these kids, as well as myself and the organization, and doing hands-on education with these kids in order to further their skills as well, empowering them in order to build more confidence, in order to creatively express themselves and do things that they just most youth or most people in third world countries just don't have the ability to do. And so we take that model and kind of replicate it everywhere that we go. So other organizations we connect with are for like women's rights. Sometimes it's animal species preservation. Sometimes it's clean drinking water projects. So the sustainable development side of things is whatever the cause is for. So sometimes that's child education and you're teaching these kids. Sometimes it's clean drinking water projects and maybe we're helping dig a well. Sometimes it's women's rights, and so it's kind of counseling and doing different types of pieces like that. It's really whatever the needs are. And so ultimately we're expanding drastically. We're actually making some pretty big connections with some pretty large organizations in order to expand our ability to connect and raise a lot of money. So most of our trips we have the ability to raise, if we sell out, which we've been selling out of everything that we do so far, about $10,000 to $15,000. The organization that we connect with basically gets in revenue. That's after all overhead costs is taken care of. That's after everything that happens. So as we expand out, I think this year we're doing 5 trips. Next year looks like we're doing 12. And the year after that, we're expanding out to probably 18 to 20. And as we grow and expand, we're bringing in other photographers to basically become independent contractors to run these trips, more so that I can, keep my wife happy and don't have to be gone for 9 months out of the year. But so that we can continue to expand our offerings, our services, in order to connect with more organizations, to do good for more causes. And ultimately, my goal is to be able to raise $500,000 to $1 million a year, with however if we can grow that big over the next 5 or 10 years, that's where I'd like to be. So like I said, right now every organization doesn't spend a dime and typically makes about $10,000 in order to further their cause, and all that money goes back towards the communities that we work in, again, which is great. So you can actually tangibly see as these people come down, the kids that are going to be benefiting from this money, where the species, animal species preservation, the cages, or however you want to look at it. It's quite unique, and it's exciting to be a part of it, and to finally see it come to fruition and everything kind of come together.
Yeah, so obviously there's a financial aspect here because you're giving money directly to the NGOs who are helping you plan the trips. But to what extent is there a kind of social awareness aspect in this? I know from my experience of going to Guatemala that, to me, one of the biggest benefits was not the amount of money that I spent while there, or the amount of money we donated to the organization we're working with. It was the amount of information we could get out when we came back to the States by giving slideshows and talking to organizations and generally raising awareness of the plight of the people down there. Do you have the same goal with the Giving Lens?
Definitely. So, I mean, every organization, struggles with donorship and awareness. And I think that part of the goals of each of these trips is obviously to create, just like Ivan didn't want to, work with religious organizations, and I hate to use the term, but evangelize. You want people to come down and really, become connected to these organizations and do stuff. But when we come back, we also have a handful of sponsors that help us put on fundraising gallery events, to do all sorts of different aspects with media. Part of our connections, as well as helping to facilitate some of that awareness. And so, for me, I've actually been I'm partnering with the Matador Network, which is the most travel network online right now. They get about 8 million unique visitors a month. And so I'm connecting with them, and the Giving Lens is directly connecting with them, allowing us, again, a much wider platform in order to speak and do stuff out. So we have a bunch of different small, mini projects in the work in order to have multiple different offerings in order for these organizations to drastically increase their awareness and reach more people for their causes, because it is vitally important. And the reality is that, yes, doing one of these trips with us, the organization maybe is able to raise, $10,000 or $15,000. But, when you have a budget of, $200,000, even for some of these smaller organizations, that's still a drop in the hat. It's still not a ton. So the whole idea is building awareness, is having people to break down those kind of cultural stigmas, or to be able to go past the superficial or stereotypical aspects of typical travel, where you visit a country for 10 days and you go to Guatemala in 10 days. How much can you really get to know Guatemala? So we try to break those down by how we structure the trips themselves. It's much more. People are comfortable, but the reality is that we try to take like local transportation. We do homestays. We do things that allow people to really get to know these cultures, these countries, these individuals that we're working with, that we're helping, because I think that also plays a role. So the finances is a piece that I think every organization definitely certainly needs, but I think more importantly, it's that kind of emotional connection. Is taking individuals down there that will come back and tell their families, that will do their own fundraising, that will join some of our combined fundraisers that we will do in order to help, again, spread the word and get the stuff out there.
So do you get feedback from your participants to indicate how they've got on, what they've got from the trip, and do you find that many of them stay involved?
Definitely. We do post-trip surveys. I do that for all my regular workshops as well. I think that's vital for anyone that really wants to continue to excel at whatever they're doing. We definitely want feedback. For the most part, we do find that people are staying connected. The challenge with humanitarian aspects, and whether that's working in a soup kitchen here in Denver, Colorado, or whether it's going on one of these trips and really connecting with an organization, is that you come back with a humanitarian high, is what I like to call it. And people have the same thing with travel. You just travel and you come back and you have that travel bug and it's wanderlust, and then all of a sudden you get assimilated back into your lifestyle. So I think that is a constant challenge for us, for this organization, for our company, in order to basically continue to give people opportunities. Again, I think is the key. It's not necessarily to remind them, but to give them opportunities in order to facilitate ways where they can continue a meaningful connection with these different organizations. And that's kind of more of a long-term goal, because again, with being 12 months in, we're still working out some kinks. We're still figuring out the best step forward for tomorrow, baby steps, so to speak. We certainly have our eye down the line, but the reality is that we're still, making today work. We're working on next week. We're working on next month. Still planning all these trips and whatnot. So it's fun. It's interesting. Like I said, it's great to see people get so involved and so engaged. Like I said, every trip that we have, we're selling out of. If we're not even selling out of, sometimes we have to open up and do 2 trips just because there's so much interest in doing them. And for me, that's really exciting to see people want to give back. And that's kind of where I'm coming from with people don't really know how to give back in tangible ways. So doing one of our workshops is great because people don't necessarily have to worry about putting the logistics together. We're handling everything. Typically, our trips are all inclusive aside from airfare. So basically, once they land in country, everything's taken care of for them. We have things organized. And it takes a lot of the fear, I think, of traveling, which again is another issue, I think, for Western cultures in general, specifically the U.S., is that people are like, oh, Guatemala, I love Guatemala. It's one of my favorite countries in Central America. It's been on the U.S. State Department's, worry about travel list for so long. But it's amazing once you get there. You get out of Guatemala City and it's beautiful. But I think a lot of people have that fear. So we try to break that down for them and educate them beforehand with requiring them to do certain readings and doing things like that. As well as obviously once they get down there, we take care of them and make sure they're safe and whatnot. So some of the countries we work in certainly are a little bit more interesting. This year, again, we're working in Jordan and Israel and Palestine, and there's a lot of things up in the air right now between Israel and Iran right now. So we're obviously keeping our eye on that stuff. But, for the most part, it's traveling around the world is beautiful, and cultures are amazing and friendly. And for the most part, the hype is what it is. It's hype. And I think that more people that see the world in meaningful ways benefits us as a species. So,
let me just try to get a different point of view here. I'm sure that you guys have a lot of contact with other photographers that are doing charity work with their photography. Here in the chat room, we had a couple of people discussing if it's something like a setback, whether a project is organized by a professional photographer or an amateur photographer. Do you think that it has that much of an importance? Ivan, what do you say?
To be honest with you, I think it just depends on the which project you're doing. I'm not doing photography full time. I have a full time job that's not a photography job. So I think I don't think it matters. And again, I was not a very well known photographer or anything like this. But we're still able to get a good exposure and get a lot of people involved. And so I think if you have a good idea, you're going to find your audience. Right. And you're going to find your participants. If you're doing something that's good, that's worthwhile, people are going to find you. And so that's kind of, I think that's the whole concept.
Colby,
I agree.
Yeah?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that there's a stigma in the photo industry with the use of this term professional. In the photo industry, professional is a subjective, typically self-given word. So people that do it full time, that just means that they make a living doing it. I think it definitely comes more so down to context of the project. I think that's the most important. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of people with good hearts that want to start or join something but don't necessarily know how. And like I said, it's so important that they do it in the right way. Seeing how the Plus One book came about and organically formed and was, definitely had more of a democratic feel to how it was orchestrated, I think was wonderful. Mm-hmm. And it created, allowed for the community to feel more a part of it. And through that, you also had a breadth of experience with people that had done this before, that people that didn't do this, that learn from the experience, and maybe they'll go off and do their own sometime in their own community or whatnot. I think that's very positive and very good. But I know some professional photographers that have come up with some, organizations or come up with some ideas that are not well thought through and just don't have the community at heart, or don't have things structured in a way to really maximize the ability to give back. So I think it's more important for these individuals, anyone that wants to give back through photography, is to do your due diligence, do your research, find out what options are out there. Really talk to the individuals that are running these programs, running these organizations. For the most part, I don't know if it's just me, but I can pretty much tell when someone's blowing smoke up my skirt when I start talking to them. So you'll get an idea once you start kind of asking the correct questions. But it's definitely context sensitive. It has nothing to do with skills in photography. Great ideas come from everywhere.
All right, Ivan, when you decided to go with this project, you have basically photographers from all levels of experience. So you have amateurs, you have professionals. Was this by choice? Was this sort of how things evolved. I'm assuming that a higher level of photography would probably result in more sales of your product outside of the photography community, but having this global engagement will increase that engagement within the community and give legs to this project. Was it like this?
Yeah, definitely. The whole idea was to do a community book, and so we opened it to everybody. Anybody could submit a photo and be published, so to speak. And so, because that's the great thing about Google Plus as a platform, is interaction is very easy, and you can communicate with people who just picked up a camera. Or the other day I was talking to Alan Ross, who, as you know, is a very well known assistant of Ansel Adams. And so it's a photographer that I've admired for many years, and he commented on some of my photos, and I was very, very surprised that he comes is looking at my photos. Kind of scary, actually, but that was the whole idea, is to include everybody, and because on Google Plus everybody is the same. They have the same stream and they have the same tools, and so I think at the end of the day it got to a point where we had too many pictures for a print book. And so that's where we came up with the idea of actually selecting photos for the book and then putting everything else in the ebook. And ebook can be as large as we want it to be. It could be 5,000 pages if we want to. It won't be 5,000 pages, but every photo that's submitted to us is going to get published, and it's going to sit there next to the photos by the established photographers who've done this for years and so forth. And so I think that's the beauty of it, is that it's a community project, and anybody can participate.
And this is a question that I had planned for you, and there was also João Almeida in the chat room that asked this. You entitled this book the Plus One Collection 2011. Will there be a 2012?
Yeah, I get that question every day, almost. Especially now that I'm meeting with people who are stopping by my house to pick up their copies. Are we doing this again? I think so. I think so. We might change the format a little bit. We're definitely going to change the focus. We're not going to do it. This time we just thought, let's just do it however and submit whatever. And so we may have more focused books in the future that are dedicated to a project rather than just random collection of work from different people. Another idea, of course, would be to do a whole project and ask photographers, give them a topic, and ask them to go shoot, and then we can publish a book for that. So there's a lot of things we can do. And book is just a one idea that we started, and that's sort of almost at the final stage. Where we're done working on it, and from then on it's just going to be distributing the book. So there's a lot of other things that we can do, and in fact, one thing that we have to do very quickly, and I realized when we collected quite a bit of cash for these books, is that we needed to incorporate. We needed to form a nonprofit organization. That's one thing. We talked about the difficulties of doing something good. Is that it's kind of like with people going into everybody that picks up a camera that loves photography, deep down in my mind they think, well, wouldn't that be cool if this is what I did for a living? This is what I did full time, so I don't have to have a different kind of job, and so I could be out there with my camera 24/7. And then they realize what a difficulty it is, and what they will actually have to do to make it out there as a professional, as a full-time photographer, that they have to feed the family, they have to get their own insurance, that they all of a sudden are going to have to file their own taxes and all that, to say nothing of marketing, because most of the time they're actually going to have to spend marketing their work rather than out there with the camera. Yeah. So it's very difficult, and a lot of us, myself included, choose not to go that route and still have a professional career that's outside of photography. And in fact, a lot of us love things outside photography as well. But it's the same way with these nonprofit things. Is do you realize there's actually logistics? If you don't have a nonprofit, if you don't have an exempt status with the IRS, well, all of a sudden, IRS is going to want a good portion of that money. And it's not easy at all to form a nonprofit organization and get an exempt status and so forth. Very difficult from legal standpoint, from accounting standpoint, tax standpoint, all kinds of different issues. that I was doing behind the scenes. But it's still possible, and there's ways out there. If you think that what you're doing is worth it, then you're going to be doing it late at night, like I have been in the last few weeks. A lot of late nights and not a lot of sleep, but that's just what happens.
Just out of curiosity, how many man hours were involved in getting this book out?
A lot. I had to do a project when filing with the IRS for the exempt status. You have to list all the officers, and that's another thing. We had to elect the board of directors. It's weird. Anyway, so I had to come up with an estimate of how many hours we think we will spend, and when I calculated this project and other projects in mind, I think we're talking at least between 500 and 1,000 hours a year. That will be spent just doing what we're doing, but we all love it. We all have fun, and none of us have ever looked at this as work. I think you just get caught up in it, and before you know it, it's 4 a.m. and you have to get up in 3 hours. So it's great. It's really good to have something like this and do it this way.
Yeah, I can relate a little bit. So I'm involved in a project that is called Axgar Magazine. So we are trying to put out narrative photography and documentary photography, and we are registering also as a nonprofit. And it is a work of love, isn't it? So you cannot count the hours because you will get scared. You cannot think about money in any way. It has to be love for what you're doing and love for seeing your project put out there. So I can definitely relate to that. I'm sure that when this show comes out, people will not be able to order the limited edition of the Plus One Collection 2011. But for people that want to buy it afterwards, where can people find it?
Yeah, we have a website, actually just called +onecollection.com, and we will have copies of the what we call a standard edition. It's just a normal book that will be smaller than the. In fact, maybe I can show you. I don't know if the video is going to be in the podcast, but let me just grab both copies so we can compare quickly.
Yeah, sure. It's not going to be on the audio, but the video when it's out. Yeah.
So this is the limited edition of the book, which is printed 11 by 13, and this came out as a kind of like a last minute idea. We said, well, why don't we try to make a bigger book? So pictures are nice and big, and it's more like a coffee book type of a thing, where you could put it on your coffee table and have it there for your guests to see. We also have prints with each of the books, and this is what's going to be a standard edition. So it's an 8x10 book. Also very nice. I prefer smaller version because I like smaller prints. I like to be able to hold it and easily carry it with me. And so pictures still look great. So this book will be on sale. Start to go on sale sometime next week or early the week after that. So sometime in the second half of March is when it's going to be available. We'll also have links to ebook where people can buy an ebook that has all the pictures. The nice thing what we did with ebook, we wanted it to be not just be pictures, but we wanted it to be very interactive. So, for example, you're looking at a picture and you like it, you'll be able to click on the photographer's name and get to his or her website. You're going to be able to get to that picture that was posted to the Google Plus stream and see the comments and comment and so forth. And then you'll be able to just explore that photographer's website. And so it's a bit of a way for us to give back to the photographers and let other people also get to their work and find them. And so. And then eventually, soon, also in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll have an app for iPad and iPhone, and we're also working on an Android version available where people can do the same but on their mobile device. So just follow the news, follow the announcements will be there on the +onecollection.com, and whenever we have something, we also have Plus One Collection page on Google Plus and on Facebook.
All right, and we'll have the links in the show notes. PhotoNetCast.com, and you'll have access to all of this. Continuing with your charity works, Colby, you mentioned that you work with local organizations, that you try to increase their financial status, but also the standing in the community and make things a little bit more easier. From your work, what is the major benefit that you think the NGOs have? Will be the direct financial contribution or the awareness that it will bring to this NGO?
I think it's a little context sensitive on that issue. I mean, some of the organizations, the organizations we connect with the Giving Lens are pretty heavily vetted, and the reason we do that is because the NGO world can be a little bit dicey. I think we've mentioned it a little bit about religious affiliations as well as political. I mean, for me, we work in some pretty interesting countries around the world, so we have to be very careful on who we connect with. And it's not that we don't want to work with faith-based organizations. It's more so that we just want to make sure that there isn't a religious agenda, because we believe that everyone has the right to believe what they want to believe rather than to have it forced. But to come back to the point of the question, I think that some organizations definitely are in more need of financial support, and some organizations are in more need of kind of raising awareness. And most organizations, I feel, actually need both. Even if it's $10,000 to $15,000 that we are basically providing to these organizations for partnering with us on a one-time, or maybe we end up doing it at a yearly basis. For some organizations, the smaller ones, that can be like a fourth of their budget for the year. For other organizations, it's more like an eighth or a 16th. So it's a little bit less important. It's more important for them to utilize kind of our connections in the industry, and for social aspects. For me, it's I have like 1,030,000 people to follow me on Google+. We also have pretty huge followers for subscriber to the Giving Lens. We also have these connections with like the Matador Network. So for the ability for us to write these articles and to have these proponents, these individuals that come on these trips and come out of it writing for them is quite huge as well. And I think that ultimately has maybe more potential to help them out, just because I'm a firm believer in the idea that you never know what's happening with networking. You never know what individual you come across that might lead to, future benefits for your organization or for your company or for yourself or for your life, or, meet a friend, whatever it is. So I think that it's context sensitive to each different organization. And we address that when we originally make contact with the organization. We let them know what we do, what we offer, and then we again work organically with them. So we have a framework that we like to go off of, but we're more than willing to adjust that in order to meet the needs of the organization. We have no misconception of being like, this is how we do it and this is how it's going to benefit you. The reality is that every organization is different. So
from the participants that go on your trips, and everyone knows when they go not only for the photography but also for the humanitarian work. What do you think becomes more important for the participants in the end? It's going to be the photography, or it's going to be the involvement in the local community?
It's the sustainable development, 100%, no doubt about it. I think that we get a very mixture of individuals, much like the Plus One book, of people coming on these trips. The ones that we have this year, we have some seasoned professionals, people that are, I've either worked in the industry as long as I have, if not more, paying to be participants to come on this. And we also have people that are bringing, that are just getting into photography and are 66 years old and just found this new passion, and they just got, micro four thirds camera. We tailor it so that it's, the educational side is icing on the cake. It's, people maybe understand a little bit better about composition or storytelling, or, maybe understand to feel a little bit more comfortable about shooting a specific type of photography when we cross that spectrum in little mini classes that we do out there. But for the most part, I think it's because people want to give back, and that's why the causes are so important for the organizations we connect with. So as I mentioned, Nicaragua's child education. For Peru, we're working with orphans, again, kind of a little bit of child education, more kind of child development. With Tanzania, it's working with the Maasai people. With Jordan, it's women's rights. And so people that are connected to these causes, that feel emotionally connected, are more likely to do these type of trips. Otherwise, I think that we would see much more of a disparity between people that sign up for these individual trips. But when we have an interview process, we don't take everyone. We're not We try to vet people that come on these trips as well, because I think it's important. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, if not a little bit higher than that, these individuals are super stoked about whatever the cause is. It's, maybe they had connections with kids, or they've done child development in the past. Maybe it's, they've donated some time to a local women's rights organization. They just wanted to figure out a way in order to combine their photography and giving back to whatever their interest is. So I think, bar none, it's definitely the social aspect. I think that's the only reason why the Giving Lens is growing as it is. It's, for me, basically, the organization is living or has its legs based on my standing in the industry and kind of my ability to get the name out there. But very quickly, we're morphing into much more into the sustainable development side, and to connect people with these causes that they feel is important to them.
So you mentioned that sounds like you choose the teams to go on each of the projects. Do people go to your website and apply to be part of it, and you then vet them based on that? Or how does that selection process work?
They do. So the reason we do that is, I teach photography education, or photography workshops, seminars, all sorts of things all around the world for just regular photography stuff. And those are much more, it's much more open. It's not obviously it's not as, doesn't have to be as carefully orchestrated. When we work with these organizations, there's a handful of different variables that we have to take into account. And because of that, we are pretty rigorous in who we connect with and who we allow to come on these trips. And the reason we just don't want to have, obviously, issues. So again, to bring up Nicaragua, it's actually the one that we have coming up, I think, the quickest. It's child education. So we don't want to just let anyone come down to work with these underprivileged kids in Nicaragua. Obviously, you can imagine at a worst case scenario, something I don't even want to talk about, where something can go really wrong. So because of that, there's an application process. Some trips, we have, again, a framework for an application that I've developed. I actually used to run trips for National Geographic in South America, so I've been putting these together for a little while. So we have a framework that is basically your standard set of questions that we try to make sure we get a chance to know people. And some of it's are fairly standard. Some of it's, what's your history? Why do you want to join this trip? What medical issues do you have? And some organizations we connect with, we'll actually work with them in order to specialize the application process. So for our trip that's going to Israel and Palestine, we again have to be very careful because of the very delicate nature of the Palestinian state and Israel and what's going on over there. And our whole purpose in going over there is to provide both sides of the fence, to showcase, both plights of this conflict that's been happening there for arguably thousands of years. So we do the application process, and then we set up a time, and I actually do, right now I'm doing all this. I actually have a handful of people working for the Giving Lens, but I like to be as hands-on as I can. So I do all the application, review all the applications, and then do all the actual interviews. So we typically do Skype interviews, maybe it's Google Plus interviews. If we have to, we'll just do a phone interview, but I want to get a chance to talk to these people. I want to ask them the questions, and, it's the same. We don't necessarily do background checks at this point, that we may get to that, but I think more realistically, it's just kind of seeing how people respond. It's the same training that people actually get for TSA guards or for border guards when, you're coming back into the country. They don't really care about your answer when they're like, what were you doing in, Mogadishu, or what were you doing in Guatemala? It's more so in how you respond. And just because of the nature that I've done these trips for a while, and I'm pretty worldly versed in getting to know people and reading people, that I'm just looking for some red flags. And we haven't had to turn too many people away, which is great. So it's working. We just needed some sort of filter in order to make it a little bit more of a special process, so to speak.
And after this great discussion, it was really a pleasure to understand a little bit more of what's going on behind these projects and how you guys are able to combine a passion for photography with a passion for giving and helping others, giving your time, giving your expertise, and making that little bit difference in the world. I think so. It was really, really good conversation, but time-wise, we are getting extended. Time for us. Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's great that you guys have not only had these wonderful ideas, but had the tenacity to actually carry them through and produce what you've done. So I'd like to applaud you for that. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on with the show. And we are going to our Selected from the Web. And if you are a regular listener, you know that this is a section in which we highlight something that has attracted our attention in the past week or 2 weeks from the photographic community. Let's see. Ivan, I didn't mention this to you, did I? That we are going to do this.
You didn't, so I'll have to go last.
Okay, just thinking, think about something.
Okay.
So let's start.
Self-promotion is allowed, though. It's okay.
Let's start with one of our guests, Colby. You have some highlights for our listeners?
Yeah, well, actually, I just wanted to do one, and it's kind of somewhat in the vein of Google Plus, or I guess community stuff. And it's actually Scott Jarvie, a wedding photographer based out of Utah, is actually putting on a photo walk and also a community event at the Festival of Colors, which is actually a Hindu festival that happens both in India as well as in Utah, of all places. It's actually the second biggest place outside of India to do this festival, and it's happening on, I think it's March 24th and 25th is the actual festival, and the 23rd we're doing a photo walk out there in Utah. So it caught my attention because I'm actually going, and I actually just saw Scott's post. So if anyone's in the Utah, Salt Lake-ish area and wants to join up, then either contact me or find us on Google Plus. There's a ton of information out there, and we'd love to have you out there.
All right.
And when you get back, please let us know how you got all that paint off the camera.
Yeah. I don't think I'm going to be bringing my camera. I think I'm just going to be hanging out.
Okay.
I had the same idea. I'll be going too, and then I thought about it. Well, first, I don't shoot color. I shoot black and white photography, and second, I just want to be out there and just being bathed in color rather than trying to. Oh, don't touch me.
Yeah, it doesn't sound fun. I'm actually bringing my wife and our 6-month-old out there, so I think we're just going to spend it as an enjoyable family vacation, hanging out with other photographers that are worrying about those things. So
Yeah, exactly.
Telephoto lens. Yeah.
Yeah.
That might work. Dave, what do you have for our listeners, for our selected from the web?
Okay, so in the last show, I think I probably mentioned the fact that I'd finally got a DSLR converter for infrared, so I'm going to become a huge infrared fan in the next couple of weeks, I'm sure. The camera just arrived. I've used it once since the weather's been so appalling this week. However, I was looking for some fantastic infrared photography to promote, and I spent an hour or so on the web trying to find who the best infrared photographers were, and in the end I fell back on one of my own friends who is Pete Talkey, who's actually written a book on infrared photography. He's pretty good at the darn thing. And the link is to his infrared gallery, and I just love what Pete does with his infrared camera. It's gorgeous. He does a mixture of black and white and color, some very interesting compositions, some very interesting post-processing styles, and it's good stuff. So look at Pete's infrared work. And that gets me into a sort of second part, which is if you're interested in having a conversion done, LifePixel, which is a company in Washington State that does the conversions, or one of the companies that does them, is having a sale just now. So rather than spending $400 to get your camera converted, it will only cost you $250 or thereabouts. So now might be a good time to look at it.
Okay.
And I also did a Blogger of the Week, which no one else seems to, or maybe you have done, I'm not sure.
I have, of course I have.
So my photo blogger of the week actually was on the chat room earlier on, so I warned him. It's Jacob Lucas, is a mate of mine who lives up in Seattle. He's actually an Aussie, and Jacob does some gorgeous HDR work and really interesting, different compositions. And on top of that, he's a really nice guy. You'll find him on Google Plus a lot. He has hangouts on a very regular basis. He shares a lot of his post-processing work. So check him out.
And as always, we have all the links in the show notes at PhotoNetCast.com. Search for the blog post for this episode. So my turn, and I am going to mention a project that was actually very, very interesting. And if you guys still are using Polaroids, you might sort of like this. It's a photographer. His name is William Miller, and basically he's using Polaroid film coming from the new The Impossible Project, so the new Polaroid film with a very old Polaroid camera. And it seems that he started noticing that since the camera was basically not functioning at all, sometimes it would sort of chew up the film, stretch the film, basically come up with absolutely weird color casts in the development. And he started doing this as a project, basically randomly trying to come up with different things from this camera using the newer film, and coming up with absolutely stunning abstract works that, if you think about it, are on a little Polaroid photo. So amazing, interesting work from William Miller. Moving on to my blogger of the week. It's a blog by Stuart Lee. And the blog is called 3 a.m. from Kyoto, and Stuart regularly puts up images on the blog, and I always enjoy his work. Composition is great, subjects are always very interesting, and I think Stuart has a great eye for photography. So check it out. Again, all the links will be on the show notes. Ivan, do you have one for us?
Yeah, I could
Great.
share a resource that's been very helpful for me in the last little while. There's a magazine out there that many of you would know called Lenswork. Lenswork is a fine art black and white focus magazine that publishes portfolio of different black and white photographers. A lot of the times it's well-known photographers like Michael Kenna and others, and other times it's less known photographers. And so they're actually don't just publish the magazine. They've recently launched a resource called Lenswork Online. I think it's lensworkonline.com, and it's a great educational resource that focuses on the aspect of creativity. What we'll see often now is there's a lot that's being written on cameras, on tools, on composition, these types of things, the basics of photography. But once you get to know the basics, it becomes, once you know how to use your camera, once you know the rule of thirds, or the fact that you need to have a nice tripod for a sharp picture, you realize that all of a sudden that's not enough to take a good picture. You also need to see things. You need to have an interesting project in mind of what you're working on to build a meaningful body of work. And so that's what Lenswork focuses on. On top of it, they have also other educational materials out there on how to get your work out there, how to get it seen, and how to publish it in the PDF form and so forth. So that's been a big help for me, big boost to my creativity, and also the fact that they connect so many photographers that have a similar interest to me, where it's a black and white work. So that's my recommendation for the week.
All right. I have to say that Brooks Jensen, the editor of Lenswork, has an amazing podcast also, and I'm sure that
Yes.
If our listeners are listening to PhotoNetCast, you enjoy podcasts, and everything is linked from lenswork.com, and I'll have the links in the show notes. It's something like 4 or 5 minutes an episode, but it comes out every day or every other day, and it's always a very inspiring conversation. Talk is alone doing that that Brooks has there. Okay, guys, I think that we are reaching the end of PhotoNetCast number 68. Let me just put out our contacts out there. If someone is interested in getting in touch with us, you can do so at the email address photonetcast@photonetcast.com. You can also use our site photonetcast.com and link to us on Google+, Twitter, Flickr, and Facebook, all of those nice things. So there is no excuse if you want to get in touch with us and ask questions. We start already to have again a backup of questions to try to answer on the show. Maybe on the next one we can get there. All that remains is thank and say goodbye to the people involved on this show. I will start with Colby Brown. Colby, it was a real pleasure having you on PhotoNetCast number 68, and I know that you are a busy guy, so taking the time to coming here and sharing your projects and your knowledge, it was a great pleasure to listen to you.
Thank you very much, and it was a pleasure being here, and thank you for the opportunity to let more people know about both the Giving Lens and also the Plus One book. I think it's more people that know about these things, the more people I think will get involved. So Thank you.
Where can people find you online?
You can find me just at colbybrownphotography.com. Colby just like the cheese, no pun intended. And then obviously I'm on Google+. It's kind of hard to miss me out there these days. So.
Okay. And our other guest, Ivan Makarov, it was also a big pleasure having you on PhotoNetCast number 68 and talking about the Plus One collection. was a pleasure
Yes,
having you.
thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here, and I'm glad to share some of these thoughts and the fact that people are interested. So that means that what we're doing is noticed. So that's appreciated.
Oh, I'm sure that our listeners will definitely enjoy seeing the fruits of your work and being interested in participating at some later point. Where can people find you online?
I have a website, just my name, Ivan Makarov, Ivan Makarov, Makarov.com, and just recently redesigned it. So just last week, actually. So take a look.
Good opportunity there.
Yeah, definitely. Luckily, I just did that. It's not in the works. So.
Okay. And also on the show, my regular co-host, Dave Wilson. Dave, it was again a pleasure having you on another PhotoNetCast.
It's been great. A great conversation today. Very much enjoyed it.
Wasn't it? Yes. Where can people find you online, Dave?
As ever, you can find me at davewilsonphotography.com. And all the links to other social media networks are there.
All right. Dave Wilson, see you on the next PhotoNetCast.
Hope so.
To our listeners, thanks so much for having downloaded another episode. And if you followed us live on the chat room and on PhotoNetCast.com/live, again, thanks for investing this little bit of your life to listen to Colby and Ivan. It was definitely a pleasure having you there. If you want to get in contact with us again, PhotoNetCast@PhotoNetCast.com. And why not, if you are listening to the show and you have access to a computer, just tweet, Google+, Facebook, whatever, and help us spread the word about PhotoNetCast. That's it for us. My name is Antonio Marques. You can see some of my work at tzplanet.com, and we'll see you on PhotoNetCast 69 in about 2 weeks' time.